Frederica, as we said yesterday, the president has a right, I think, to defend our borders. He made it clear in his campaign he was going to strengthen the vetting process. But that said, it's very, very important from here on out, after the chaos and the confusion and, frankly, the damage to America's public face around the world and the harm that came, or the pain that these families felt. I think it's imperative that the White House do this in a much more orderly, thoughtful fashion, bringing in Homeland Security, bringing in others. And these things about getting into websites and social media and who your contacts are and so forth, maybe they'll work, but there ought to be evidence before we move down that track. We should not do things that invade people's privacy too much. We ought to questions that are reasonable. And it's worth remembering, we have strengthened enormously our vetting processes since 9/11. In the years that have followed, the 15 years or so that have followed, if you come in as a refugee, usually you've been vetted for about 2 years, with people paying close attention to you. So I think the administration, it's really, really important that they do it carefully, they do it thoughtfully, they do it with empathy for the people involved, and to show the world that we are not an anti-Muslim nation. The message we've sent out so far is Muslims are not welcome in America anymore. That is not where we want to be, and that's what a lot of these demonstrations are about.
Well, when the administration has been challenged on the selection of these 7 countries, Reince Priebus this morning reiterated, if anything, there may be an expansion. They may even consider including other nations, and at the same time releasing a statement that despite some court orders, they will proceed as the executive order spells out. So what, in your view, David, is the biggest consequence, or perhaps even the biggest gain, from this White House digging in its heels about this executive order?
Well, they're being very defensive, and listen, they're new to their jobs and so forth. But this controversy has become the biggest single action of his presidency, and it frankly is damaging him politically. Yes, his supporters will continue to rally around, but much of the world is aghast and just very upset. And you've got all these demonstrations that prove that. I think going forward, an additional question, Paul Callan could respond to this much more than I can. Lawyers who are involved trying to help the people who are coming in, they have expressed a fear, passed a message to me, that their biggest fear is that the administration may flout the law, that it may essentially say the judges, they'll dismiss the judges. There have been conflicting reports coming out of the White House itself about whether they'll respect what these judges have said. I think then if they dismiss it and flout the law, this could move into the area of constitutional crisis. I doubt that will happen, but Paul will, I think, be able to shed light on it.
So, Paul, do you see this as going to the U.S. Supreme Court?
Oh, I do see this going to the Supreme Court. And frankly, David raises a very legitimate issue here. If the Trump administration chose to flout the orders of these federal judges, you would have a severe constitutional crisis. But people should understand, when I last checked, I think 4 federal district courts have ruled against the Trump administration. Now, those orders tend to be binding only in the districts in which those courts exist. So, for instance, the Boston federal court has issued an order which will be enforced by federal marshals in Boston. That's the reason, though, why I think ultimately we have to see this go up to the U.S. Supreme Court so that the same rule exists throughout the United States. And hopefully, in the districts where federal orders have been issued, the administration will obey those orders, as has been the custom and practice throughout the history of the United States. Or David's right, we would have a real constitutional crisis on our hands.
All right, Paul Callan, David Gergen, we'll leave it right there. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll have much more right after this.